It was a calm morning in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. Ibrahim Traoré, known for his humility and connection to the people, chose to walk alone through the city center after a meeting at the presidential palace. He cherished these moments of contemplation, away from the constraints of leadership, where he could personally witness the daily lives of his citizens. As he moved through a lively square, something drew his attention. Beneath the shade of a tree, an elderly man in tattered clothing sat on a makeshift bench crafted from wooden crates. In his hands he held a worn book, attentively reading each page while disregarding the surrounding commotion. Traoré's brows furrowed, sensing something oddly familiar about the man. Quietly stepping closer, he recognized him. It was Professor Adama, his former philosophy teacher from high school. This was the man who had inspired countless young Burkinabés to dream ambitiously and fight for justice. Now, he was here, living on the street. Traoré's heart grew heavy. He vividly recalled Adama's teachings on ethics, dignity, and the intrinsic worth of every human being. "Professor Adama," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. The elderly man glanced up from his book, startled. Upon recognizing Traoré, his eyes welled with tears. He attempted to rise but trembled with frailty. Traoré rushed to support him, gently grasping his arms. "Mr. President," Adama murmured, clearly embarrassed. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Don't call me President," Traoré replied firmly, yet with warmth. "To me you will always be my teacher." Adama shook his head, tears threatening to fall. "Much has changed, Ibrahim. I'm no longer the man you once knew. You will always be the man who taught me the meaning of dignity," said Traoré, holding his teacher's weathered hands. "But how did this happen? What brought you here?" Adama paused before answering. "Debt took my home. My pension isn't enough to survive on. I tried offering private lessons, but my health, it no longer permits it." Traoré listened silently, a mix of anger and sorrow stirring within him. He knew that stories like Adama's were far too common. Teachers who had devoted their lives to educating the nation were now being left behind. "Come with me," he said, lifting Adama with care. "Let's go somewhere more comfortable." Still overwhelmed by the sight of his former mentor living on the streets, Ibrahim Traoré helped Adama into an official car waiting nearby. He understood that this was no mere coincidence. It was a moment that demanded reflection on the inequalities that continued to exist in Burkina Faso despite recent progress. En route to a local bank where he typically managed personal affairs, Traoré decided to take meaningful action. He instructed the driver to stop in front of the bank and entered with Adama beside him. The bank's manager, a well-dressed young man named Sosan, was visibly taken aback to see the president, especially accompanied by someone so modest in appearance. "Mr. President," said Sosan, hurrying to greet him. "It's an unexpected honor. How may I assist you?" Traoré motioned toward Adama with a gentle hand. "This is Professor Adama, my former teacher. He was a cornerstone of our country's education system, inspiring entire generations. Today, he's here with us because something long neglected must be made right." Sosan looked puzzled. "Of course, Mr. President. What exactly can I do?" Traoré met his gaze, his tone resolute. "I want you to establish a dedicated account for Burkina Faso's retired teachers, one that guarantees they never again endure what Professor Adama has faced. And I want it implemented today." The manager hesitated, visibly uneasy about the logistics and financial implications, but seeing the resolve in Traoré's eyes, he quickly responded, "Yes, Mr. President, we'll make it happen." Adama, who had remained quiet until then, finally spoke. "Mr. President, I don't know what to say. I don't deserve all of this." Traoré placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, eyes glistening. "You deserve far more than this. Professor, you spent your life shaping minds and hearts. Now it's our responsibility to care for you." While Sosan began handling the administrative procedures, Traoré sat beside Adama on a modest bench, quietly honoring the man who once taught him to stand for dignity and justice. He understood this was no longer simply about one teacher. It was about all the unseen heroes who had shaped the nation. "Professor," said Traoré, his voice gentle but filled with determination, "you once taught me that true wealth is found in knowledge and dignity. Today we're taking a small but vital step to make sure others like you can also live with dignity." Adama slowly shook his head, hands trembling as he clutched the cap he wore. "I always believed you would accomplish great things, Ibrahim," he said. "But I never imagined it would be like this, so compassionate, so present." Traoré smiled, thinking of the lessons Adama had given him decades ago. "I learned from the finest, Professor. Now it's time I give back what I received to our people." Meanwhile, word of Traoré's unannounced visit to the bank quickly spread across the city. Employees and clients present discreetly recorded the moment, posting videos on social media. The footage inspired public discussions about the value of education and the treatment of retired educators. At the conclusion of the meeting, Sosan presented a preliminary proposal to Traoré. "Mr. President, we will create a dedicated account for retired teachers, supplemented with government-funded benefits. We will also reassess existing pension schemes to ensure that no one is left behind." Traoré nodded in approval. This is only the beginning. I want this initiative expanded to the national level. Every teacher deserves to be honored for their service." Adama, still overwhelmed with emotion, stood slowly. "Mr. President," he said, "I have only one thing to say: thank you, not just on my behalf, but for all of us." Traoré embraced the professor with heartfelt tenderness. "Thank you, Professor, for everything." Ibrahim Traoré's move to establish a special fund for retired teachers quickly captured national attention. The story of his encounter with his former teacher, Adama discovered living on the streets, deeply moved the hearts of the Burkina people. Within hours, images and videos from his bank visit spread rapidly on social networks, triggering a surge of admiration and solidarity for the president. Citizens began sharing personal tributes to teachers who had shaped their lives, while others called for comparable initiatives to support overlooked groups such as nurses and elderly farmers. During a press conference at the presidential palace, Traoré addressed the people of Burkina Faso. He stood alongside several retired teachers, including Adama, who now wore clean new clothes and appeared healthier after receiving proper care. Professor Adama Traoré said, his voice quivering with feeling, "Is not just a man, he is a symbol of what is broken in our system. A nation that fails to value its educators is headed toward failure. That must change," he announced. The launch of a national initiative titled Appreciation of Unsung Heroes, a program designed to ensure that all individuals who had contributed to the country's development received proper recognition and support. "We're not only talking about teachers," he emphasized. "We're talking about nurses, farmers, factory workers, everyone who has built this country with their minds and hands. They deserve our gratitude, our respect, and most of all, our protection." The audience responded with enthusiastic applause. Many were in tears. Adama, seated beside Traoré, rose slowly to speak. "Mr. President," he said, his voice trembling but firm, "what you are doing today is more than policy. It is an act of love for our people. And I know it will change lives just as it changed mine." In the following days, the Valuation of Anonymous Heroes program began rolling out across Burkina Faso. Retired teachers received enhanced benefits, and mobile medical teams were dispatched to rural areas to attend to neglected elderly citizens. In a remote village in the Burkina interior, one of the first to benefit from the program was a retired teacher named Fatou. She received an updated pension and free health services, something she never imagined possible. "I've always told my students that education is the key to the future," she said during an interview with a local TV channel. "But I never thought anyone would remember me when I needed help. Thank you, President Traoré, for restoring our dignity." At the same time, international media began highlighting Traoré's initiative as a shining example of compassionate leadership. Newspapers and magazines featured articles praising the president's ability to turn personal experiences into public policy. "Traoré isn't just governing a nation," wrote a columnist from The Guardian, "he is restoring its soul." His devotion to dignity and justice offers a model for leaders everywhere. Following the implementation of the Valuing Unsung Heroes program, Burkina Faso began to experience a profound transformation in its society. The initiative not only improved the quality of life for thousands of elderly people, but also awakened a sense of pride and gratitude among the entire population. People who had previously felt forgotten by the system now had their voices heard and their needs addressed. During a special ceremony organized in the center of Ouagadougou, hundreds of people gathered to celebrate the progress made through the program. Among those present were retired teachers, elderly nurses, veteran farmers, and even young students who had been inspired by the stories of these unsung heroes. Ibrahim Traoré took the stage dressed simply in traditional Burkinab clothing. He looked out over the crowd, visibly moved to see so many people whose lives had been transformed by the initiative today. He said, his voice thick with emotion, "We are not here just to celebrate numbers or public policies. We are here to honor those who built this country with their hands and minds. You are the true pillars of Burkina Faso." He paused, letting the words settle in the hearts of those listening, then continued, "When I met Professor Adama on the streets of our capital, I asked myself how we had allowed this to happen. How did we let our heroes be forgotten? But today, I see that we are correcting that mistake, and this is only the beginning." Adama, sitting in the front row, slowly stood up to speak. He made his way to the microphone with effort, but his eyes shone with pride. "Mr. President," he said, his voice trembling but steady, "you have given us back something we thought we had lost forever, our dignity. And more importantly, you have shown us that a leader must, above all, be human." The crowd erupted in applause. Many were moved to tears. Traoré embraced Adama warmly, aware that this was more than a political event. It was a testament to the power of compassion and authentic leadership. At the end of the ceremony, a child approached Traoré and handed him a small gift, a handmade notebook wrapped in traditional African fabric. Inside, a simple message was written: "Heroes never die. They live in our hearts." Traoré smiled as he accepted the gift, knowing it was more than a token. It was a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can lead to significant change. As the crowd began to disperse, Traoré walked over to Adama and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "Teacher," he said softly, "you were my guide when I was young, And now, you are still guiding my showing the world what truly matters." Adama smiled, his eyes bright with emotion. "And you, Ibrahim, are proof that a student can become greater than his master. You are changing our country, and I could not be more proud." The story of Traoré and Adama quickly became a global symbol of how compassion and respect can transform lives. For many, this was more than a political achievement. It was a demonstration that true leadership means recognizing the worth of every person and acting with humility and conviction. Observing the scene, a journalist quietly jotted down in his notebook, "Today in Burkina Faso I saw the future of an Africa that honors its past, uplifts its heroes, and builds bridges of dignity for all."